Hello, and welcome to Quick and Creepy, where the killers come to you.
In the early 1980s, a group of satanic murderers lurked on the streets of Chicago and the surrounding suburbs in a large red van. The murderous gang killed up to 18 people. Their victims were tortured, mutilated, and murdered to appease the whims of the crew's leader in bizarre, ritualized acts of brutality. Body parts were taken to an attic altar where the ringleader read from the Satanic Bible as the group ate the flesh of their victims in a sick perversion of Holy Communion. The Chicago Rippers, aka the Ghosts of the Windy City. Robin Gecht was the leader of this despicable group of murderers. At one point, he worked for another serial killer, John Wayne Gacy, at his company, PDM Contractors. His accomplices were Edward Spreitzer and the brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokorlis. Gecht was born in 1953. His perversions began at an early age. In his early teens, he is said to have molested his sister. Because of this, his parents sent him away to live with his grandparents. He would soon become obsessed with Satanism. He was said to be very charismatic and could draw people in, much like the notorious Charles Manson. One of the investigators would compare the two, stating that Gecht made Manson look like a Boy Scout. While working for PDM Contractors, Gecht would mold the crew of young men into a cult-like team of killers. He would often read passages of the Satanic Bible to his accomplices as they committed their heinous atrocities. Edward Spreitzer was born in January 1961. Andrew Kokorlis was born in July 1963, and his brother Thomas was born in 1958. The murders began on the 23rd of May, 1981. 28-year-old prostitute Linda Sutton was kidnapped from a Chicago suburb. 10 days after Sutton disappeared, the smell of death was reported behind a motel in a town called Villa Park. Police arrived expecting to find a dead deer, but instead found the young woman's body. She had been handcuffed, then stabbed and mutilated. Her left breast had been completely removed. Due to the extreme nature of the violence committed against her, she was only identified through dental records. The next known murder did not occur until almost exactly 1 year after the first killing. On the 15th of May in 1982, Lorri Borowski was snatched off the street as she approached the Elmhurst Realtor's office where she worked. Her boss found personal items scattered outside the business, and a man named Frederick Moberly, who worked near the site of the abduction, reported seeing a reddish-orange van parked in a normally empty lot close by. Her skeletal remains were found 5 months later at a cemetery in the town of Darien. Her shirt was raised to her armpits, and her bra was dragged down with evidence of similar atrocities as were committed against the previous victim. She was identified by the clothing she was wearing. The next to fall prey to the gang of Satan-worshipping killers was Shui Mak. 30-year-old Mak was also kidnapped in May 1982. Her body would not be found until September of that year in some woods in the northwest corner of Cook County, Illinois. Her skull had been fractured in multiple places and 2 ribs had been cracked. Due to the level of decomposition, investigators were not sure that she had been stabbed. However, this was a potential cause of the damaged ribs. Only 2 weeks after the murder of Shui Mak, the group pulled a young prostitute named Angel York into their van. She was handcuffed before being beaten, and her chest was slashed similar to the previous victims. She was then thrown from the van. Luckily, she survived this horrific ordeal, but unfortunately her description of her attackers did not lead to any arrests. The next victim was not found for 2 months. On August 28, 1982, Sandra Delaware's remains were discovered on the banks of the Chicago River. Her left breast had been chopped off, fitting the attack pattern of the Ripper crew. She had also been stabbed and strangled. Just over a week later, on the 8th of September, the body of a 31-year-old woman named Rose Davis was found in an alley off Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. She had worked as a marketing executive, and she bore the telltale signs of a Ripper crew victim. An unconfirmed victim of the Satanists was Carol Pappas. She was the wife of Chicago Cubs pitcher Milt Pappas. She went missing on September 11, 1982. Her body was found 5 years later. Her death was ruled as an accident. However, some investigators believe she fell prey to the Rippers. The next victims broke the gang's pattern of murder. On October 6, 1982, Spreitzer was driving the group's van when Robin Gecht told him to slow down as they approached two men in a phone booth. He then raised a rifle and opened fire on the pair. Rafael Torrado was a 28-year-old drug dealer, and his companion was an 18-year-old named Alberto Rosario. Rosario survived the shooting, but Torrado died later in the hospital and was the only man to be killed by the group. Soon after the shooting on the same day, the gang attacked their last known victim before they were caught. The victim, Beverly Washington, was found by some railroad tracks on October 6 in 1982, barely alive. Her left breast had been removed by the sick gang of killers and the other had been badly slashed. Police were able to get descriptions of the group that attacked her as well as their van. The gang's luck ran out shortly after the attack on Beverly Washington. Police stopped their van as it matched the description of that which Frederick Moberly had seen at the scene of Lorri Borowski's abduction and described by Beverly Washington. A search turned up 3 knives in the back, as well as the discovery that the inside door of the back compartment had been removed so that a tool had to be used to open it from within. Edward Spreitzer had been driving, but the vehicle was registered to Robin Gecht, who had been on the police's radar since 1981 when a criminal complaint was filed against him, but not enough evidence could be found to arrest him at the time. Soon after the van was stopped, Gecht was arrested. He was brought into custody on October 20th, but due to a lack of evidence was out on bail by the 26th. However, the police learned that Robin Gecht and his 3 accomplices had rented adjoining motel rooms near the site where Linda Sutton's body had been found. The motel's manager reported hearing chanting coming from the rooms as well as loud parties. He described the group as cultists. The Kokorlis brothers also left a forwarding address with the manager, which he passed on to the police. When police arrived at the address, they found Thomas, and his answers to their questions were suspicious enough to earn him a trip to the police station. After failing a polygraph examination, he broke and began telling police of the group's sadistic rituals in their makeshift satanic chapel in Robin Gecht's attic. He described how they tortured the victims with knives and ice picks, as well as assaulting them sexually and amputating a breast using a wire garrote before ultimately killing them as a sacrifice to the devil. The group would then eat a portion of the severed body part, and the rest was put into a box where Gecht treated them as trophies. Thomas Kokorlis said that at one time he saw 15 separate breasts in this box. He also added that some of their victims had been killed at the motel where they had stayed near the Borowski crime scene. With the testimony of Thomas Kokorlis, arrest warrants were issued for the men involved and search warrants for Gecht's home. Soon, Edward Spreitzer, Andrew Kokorlis, and Robin Gecht were in police custody. In Gecht's upstairs room, the police found the satanic chapel that Thomas had described, as well as a rifle which matched the weapon used in the Torrado shooting. Thomas was charged with the murder of Lorri Borowski and indicted on November 14th. His brother Andrew and Edward Spreitzer were charged with the assault and murder of Rose Davis on the same day. Gecht was charged with multiple counts, but during his trial, which began in September 1983, he only confessed to the attack on surviving victim Beverly Davis. He was subsequently convicted and sentenced to 120 years in prison. Thomas Kokorelis and his lawyers attempted to prevent his admission from being entered as evidence unsuccessfully, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Edward Spreitzer pled guilty to the murders of Davis, Delaware, Mak, and Torado and was sentenced to life for each on April 2, 1984. On March 20th, he was sentenced to death for his role in the death of Linda Sutton. This death sentence would later be commuted to life in prison. Andrew Kokorelis was sentenced to death for the murder of Rose Davis on March 18, 1985. He was killed by lethal injection on March 16, 1999. Robin Gecht is currently housed in Lawrence Correctional Center. Edward Spreitzer is currently housed in Statesville Correctional Facility. Thomas Kokorelis was able to fight for parole eligibility in an appeal and was released in 2019. In a bizarre twist, Robin Gecht's son, David, would also grow up to become a murderer. David Gecht was convicted of murder in March of 2000 and is currently housed at the Pontiac Correctional Facility.